Hey, it's Ryan. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it as always. A quick video today on a subject I found interesting, Super Bowl 55. Not the game itself. What I found interesting was the camera technology they used in this game, of course. So I wanted to take a little deep dive into it, a brief one, but take a look at what was used, what was probably used, and we'll just discuss it in this video and in the comments. I don't know everything, but building up to the Super Bowl, some broadcasting channels and websites were talking a little bit about the new technology that was going to be used at Super Bowl 55. For a while now, they've been implementing some interesting things. The augmented reality and green screen stuff that they use is really cool. There's some videos you can probably find on YouTube about how they lay some of the first down lines and stuff on the field when the whole field is green. So it's kind of like one big green screen. So how do they lay those lines down and players can still walk over them? Lots of great technology and feats of engineering going on with that kind of thing. Briefly in this video, though, I want to touch on some of the cameras they used at this year's Super Bowl. Building up to the big game, as I mentioned, some press releases were coming out. One big number they were throwing around was this: CBS will utilize 120 cameras to bring you this year's Super Bowl. Now, most of these press releases don't go into deep detail about what these cameras were. They do break it down a little bit by number. 32 cameras on pylons, 31 super slow-mo cameras, 18 robotic cameras, 12 8K and 4K cameras. We'll get back to that in a minute. 4 sky cams / fly cams, several of those trolley cams hanging above the stadium, which when you look into that, I can't necessarily tell you for sure what those were. Although last year they used 8K Sony cameras, I believe, and those 8K cameras were the HDC 8300. Not something you're probably familiar with. You can look them up though. They look like this. Another thing they kept mentioning in the press releases and all this hype building up to how good this game was going to look was that they were going to utilize some 8K cameras down on the field, and they kept talking about how they were going to bring a shallow depth of field or a cinematic end zone view. And this is just a fancy way of saying they were going to use full frame cameras to bring a shallow depth of field. Some people were like, oh, it looks like Madden. It looks like a video game. Well, those of you who know a little bit about cameras and lenses know that shallow depth of field is kind of what they were saying. So they were using full frame cameras, and they were had the aperture open, obviously pretty deep. I can't show any of the footage. You can look it up online, but it just looks like portrait mode on your iPhone, for example, but a lot better. Now, back in December, before the Super Bowl was even here, they were using a couple of cameras in the end zone. People were freaking out. Oh, it looks like Madden and everything. And I wondered what those were. I found an article that said that they were Sony DSLRs. I highly doubt they were Sony Alpha 99s or whatever. In fact, they were not. What those cameras were, at least building up to the Super Bowl when they started using the shallow depth of field in the end zone cams, were Sony A7R4s on a gimbal. I'll put a picture of what was going on the screen. And that was really cool to see, because here's a consumer level camera, granted a more expensive full frame hybrid camera like the A7R4, but this is a camera that you and I could buy if we had the money to buy it, for example. So this camera retails for $29.99. That's $2,999 US dollars. You can buy them on eBay though. Let's see what this A7R4 is going for on eBay. Okay, so here's a listing on eBay right now. $25.50 for an A7R4 35 millimeter full frame camera. 61 megapixels on that bad boy. But it's cool to see that they're using just a professional Sony mirrorless in the end zone. People were freaking out about how good that looks. What also is interesting about that is the A7R4 does not shoot with the same high codecs that the A7S III shoots with. The A7S III, of course, has 10-bit video. It shoots really good video footage. The A7R4 still has the old Sony 8-bit codec. It can shoot 4K, but it's just 8-bit 4K, so it's nothing spectacular. In fact, it can't even shoot 10-bit at all. So the fact that they were using it and people were freaking out about how good it looks really was just a testament to how good the Sony cameras are and how much people like the look of depth of field in their pictures, even though they may not be able to describe it. They see a shallow depth of field. There's the player. It's blurry in the background. Man, that looks awesome. They may not know how or why it looks awesome, but that kind of explains it right there. Now, one thing they did with the Super Bowl, I'm not sure. I imagine they were still using some A7R4s, but they added 1 or 2 Sony Venice cameras, which are full frame professional digital movie cameras, digital cinema cameras. The Sony Venice, you may not know of the camera or about the camera, but you've seen stuff that's been shot on it. In fact, shows that were shot on the Sony Venice include the Netflix show Bridgerton, the new Justin Timberlake movie Palmer, What We Do in the Shadows, Hillbilly Elegy, The Blacklist shoots on Sony Venice. Great show, by the way. Bad Boys for Life, Cobra Kai, and Lucifer, also another pretty great show. So it was cool that they kind of employed that. I don't know for sure what the additional benefits were. I mean, it can shoot better codecs and better things like that. But at the end of the day, they broadcast everything in 1080p. It's just kind of standard broadcasting format. So they were shooting a bunch of it in 6K or 8K, I guess, or even 4K. But it was all broadcast in 1080p. So you've got some downsampling. So, you know, obviously they're getting a crisper, better 1080p, I guess. But still cool to see all of this happening in sports and in broadcasting. So yeah, so just a quick video to look at some of this cool stuff that I found interesting. Hopefully you find it interesting. If you read something I didn't, or you have additional information, definitely leave it in the comments. We'll talk about it. This stuff's cool to me. A couple more things I found were interesting. The trolley cam goes 65 miles an hour. So that was just a cool fact in and of itself. And then the 8K, they had used 8K in the past, as I mentioned earlier, but I guess it was way up in the air. It was up in the stadium. And this time they had some 8K down on the ground. Now that's cool and everything. And, you know, 8K has kind of been the talk with the Canon R5 and with the new Sony. And speaking of the new Sony, I don't know if that's specifically what they were talking about, but one of the other cameras they had down on the ground was the new Sony A1. This was all abuzz on YouTube last week. It's a Sony mirrorless. It looks like this, just like the A7S III or the A7R4 that we discussed. This is Sony's new hybrid, and it shoots 8K video. So I'm not sure if that's the one they were specifically talking about, but it's been confirmed there was a Sony A1, an Alpha 1, at the Super Bowl shooting some of this footage too. So kind of cool that consumer technology is catching up with stuff as high-end as the Super Bowl. The Sony Venice, it didn't excite me as much. It was cool that it was there. Okay, they've got a digital cinema camera that shoots some great Netflix shows and TV shows and movies that we like or whatever. But that's the kind of thing you'd expect to have at the Super Bowl. What I found more interesting was that some of these consumer cameras, albeit expensive, high-end consumer cameras and hybrid mirrorless cameras, are making it on a broadcast as expensive and big and high production as the Super Bowl. And I thought that was pretty cool. That's all I really wanted to make this video about. Again, if you liked it, please leave a like, leave a comment. We'll discuss it. If you know something I don't, again, leave it in the comments. As always, I appreciate you being here. I'll talk to you real soon. I'll see ya.